Hi everyone, it's Charlie Webster here. Welcome on to My Sporting Mind, the podcast that's all about opening the conversation around mental health, both in sport and life. Season 2 is proudly supported by sportinglife.com. Expert insight, passionate opinion, and in-depth analysis for the sports you love, all for free. Today, I'm super excited to welcome an absolute superstar of the tennis world to the podcast, 12-time Grand Slam winner, Jordanne Whiley, MBE. Welcome along.
Hi.
Your little clap there.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for joining us. I can't wait to speak to you. I've followed quite a bit of your career and I was around at London 2012 Paralympics as well. But what's this last year been like for you? Because you've obviously had so many competitions postponed. How have you coped with that constant uncertainty?
Yeah, I mean, it's been difficult. I think everyone's struggled with so many things. And I think 2020 was supposed to be a big year for a lot of people. Like I know a lot of people had planned. I don't know what it was about 2020. I think some people, new jobs, wedding, babies, whatever it was just the year. And yeah, it's been really difficult, especially with competitions, just to try and get ready for competitions, to have them just push back. So yeah, it's not been the easiest ride, but now I'm starting to understand that that's just the way of the world at the moment, and I just have to adapt.
But then on the other hand, you've got this year now where it's literally full on. I was kind of going through some of your competitions and I was like, well, hang on, you've got Roland Garros, you've got Wimbledon, the British Open, Paralympics, and then you've got US Open after that, and you've got a little boy. So now how are you looking ahead towards that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm just taking it 1 week at a time because everything's just changing all the time. And we're competing in France and they've just come out of a lockdown, and then I'm hoping, obviously in the UK everything's looking good for 21st of June, so like praying that everything will be okay for Wimbledon. We still don't know like the details from Tokyo, and obviously in America. So there's so many different points that I need to try and think about, and I just can't fathom that in my mind right now. So I'm just sort of just taking it as it comes, and I'll cross the bridges when I need to.
Do you almost kind of like decompartmentalize, if that's even a word, things where it's like, I can't, the way I suppose I just reeled it off was like, whoa, that's a lot. So what's kind of your trick to making sure that you can do that so it doesn't become overwhelming?
Yeah, I mean, I'm used to competing, in a normal year, I would compete probably 15 tournaments a year. So that's more than one a month. So my schedule is normally full on. So that part of it isn't really that daunting. But all the other stuff, I mean, it's a lot, but it just is what it is, right? So I just cope. I don't know how to do it. I just do.
I love that. It is what it is. Sometimes I think it's good to say that though, isn't it? Because I think otherwise it's like, I think we can almost talk ourselves out of things. But I think simplifying it like that's a big thing. I wanted to also ask you about how you feel about the games coming up. You've mentioned you're still not sure, but in terms of Tokyo, but then for you, I remember you at Beijing and then at Rio, and you've said before about Rio that it was like, this is your phrase, like it was a really bad breakup and it took me almost a year to get over Rio. So then how do you now look back at that and look forward as in your expectation around Tokyo? Because there's that one thing, you've won so many Grand Slams, but it's that one gold medal.
Yeah, it's it definitely did feel like a bad breakup. I worked so hard for 4 years, and I broke my wrist, and like in 2012 I was disappointed because I was an absolute bottle job and I was so nervous, and that was on me. Whereas in Rio I was in the shape of my life. I was probably one of the favorites for gold. I was 3 in the world. I'd previously beaten the world number 1 in the last tournaments I'd played. So I was like, yeah, this is it. I'm going to win gold. And then quarterfinals, my wrist broke, and it wasn't, nothing that I could have done about it. So it was really hard to process and accept that. And then, for Tokyo now, I'm just a different person. I just don't feel like I'm that Rio me is just like a completely different entity. I was very overwhelmed and consumed with tennis. So I wasn't a mum. I hadn't had a year out of it in a global plague to sort of just do normal stuff and sort of self-reflect and work on myself as a person. So now I just feel like I'm in such a better place as a human that it will make me a better athlete.
You know, it's something that's come up so much when I've been speaking to athletes about that they're not all consumed in their sport, because it's almost like that compounds so much anxiety when everything hangs on that. You just briefly touched on that. Can you expand about how that's changed for you and how it's helped?
Yeah, I mean, I think it changed the moment I had my son, and I knew that, you know, tennis had been my whole entire world for so many years, and now it effectively wasn't. You know, that I had this small human that I had to look after, and he was the forefront of my life, and tennis had to take a step back. And now, you know, when I come back to sport, I've gone from training 5 days a week, sort of 25, 30 hours a week, to training, well, 3 to 4 times a week because of childcare and then obviously COVID and everything. So it's just about being adaptable. And at first it was a little bit tricky just to find that balance between motherhood and being an elite athlete. But now I think I've got my support network around me. Like my mum, she's just incredible. And my son's now at preschool, so it's a lot easier to sort of balance the two.
What was it like for you coming back into competition then after your son?
Tennis wise, great, because it's been ingrained in me. I didn't forget how to play tennis. But fitness wise, like awful, because I'd gained like 2 stone. I didn't feel great within myself because of the weight gain. I definitely wasn't fit enough. And getting the fitness back was really difficult. I'd lost like all muscle tone in my arms. So you know, everyone else had been playing for the last 2 years, so they were all match fit and in good shape. So it was really difficult actually just to get the fitness back. The tennis was there, but the match sharpness just wasn't.
How did you deal with that mentally?
Well, to be honest, I was just like, well, I need to just eat vegetables and just I just need to get myself back into shape, you know. Like I couldn't fit into any of my kit, I couldn't fit into my wheelchair. I didn't like the photos that were being taken of me. I didn't feel good, I didn't feel healthy. And you know, that's because I got pregnant and thought, well, I'm going to eat every cake in sight, because as an athlete you have to watch what you eat. And then I was like, oh, who cares? Like, I'm pregnant, I'm eating for 2 and I ate for 5. So it's my own fault. But yeah, I just got back on it. I was just quite stern with myself. I was just like, right, I'm just going to get back on it, because if I'm going to have the best chance possible for Tokyo, then I need to be in the best shape.
You mentioned, you know, that then you couldn't fit in your wheelchair. So maybe if I take you back a little bit for when you were growing up, because for people listening, you were born with osteogenesis imperfecta, which is often referred to as brittle bone disease, like imperfect bones, I think is the literal translation. What was it like for you growing up?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. I was in and out of hospital from birth up until the age of about 12. Yeah, I was breaking my leg probably at least once a year. I was having countless surgeries on top of that, and I probably couldn't walk unaided until I hit high school, sort of like year 8. So it was difficult because I missed out on a lot as a kid. Like I couldn't go to a lot of birthday parties, bouncy castles, sleepovers had to be limited to like one person. So yeah, it was kind of sheltered, but when I found tennis, it was sort of a way that I could do something that I loved with people who were in similar situations to me, and that I didn't feel like the odd one out.
Did it feel very isolating at school? Because I know you said you've spoken about being bullied before.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a lot of friends growing up, and I think, you know, late 90s, early noughties, disability wasn't really normalized then. it was kind of like when you got braces, right? It was you got the mick taken out of you for having braces, whereas now everyone's got braces. And it was the same being in a chair. I was the only person in a wheelchair who had any sort of disability actually in both of my schools. And children didn't understand why I would get what they said special treatment, when actually it was just like leaving the class 5 minutes early so that I didn't get caught in the rush. So it was tough. Like, I didn't really enjoy school, if I'm honest.
Did you understand your disability? Did you see that? How did you view it? It was interesting when you said about that. Like now it's a lot more normal, but back then, I think you're right. Things were quite different. But how did you view it?
I've always been. I sort of treat my disability like my hair color. Like, it's something I was born with. It's kind of irrelevant to me. It is what it is, like what I said. I don't know. I it's kind of difficult to explain. But like, I know I have it, right? It's not going away. It's not curable. It's something I was born with. I have to live with for the rest of my life. But I can't change anything about it. So in my head, it's irrelevant. Like, it's just part of me, but it never ever defines me. It never stops me from doing something that I want to do. If I want to do something, I will just adapt it. And if I really can't do something, like, I don't know, rock climbing, then I'll probably attempt it and then just complain that I can't do it. So it's just it's just one of those things that when I said, if I'm not really bothered about it, I just mean that it's kind of irrelevant for what I want to achieve in my life.
Was that acceptance always there then? Because hearing you now, it's like, yep, this is me. Was that always the case?
Pretty much. Like, I think it helped. Like, my dad has the same disability, so I grew up in a household where my dad had exactly the same as what I had. He was in a chair as well. Obviously, when you get to your teens, everyone has that, oh, I wish I could not have scars on my legs, or I wish that I was a little bit taller, or I think that's just a teen thing. Like, I just wanted to fit in a little bit more. But I mean, apart from that, I was always very accepting of my disability, and this is how I am. Kind of take it or leave it.
Yeah, you mentioned your dad there because he was a Paralympian as well. So did that help you in terms of how you saw yourself to be able to go and do anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, my whole life I've pretty much been surrounded by sport and people in wheelchairs. So like, they're perfect for me. I saw my dad. He got bronze, and that was obviously really cool. And as a kid, I was always like, oh, I'm gonna beat your bronze. Like, definitely gonna get better than a bronze. And now I've got 2 bronzes. I still haven't beat my dad, which is probably the most upsetting out of everything. So for Tokyo, I said I absolutely must not get another bronze because I need to beat my dad.
I love that motivation. It's like, come on, Dad. So tell us about when you first started playing tennis then, because it was very, very, very young.
Yeah, I was 3. I was out in Israel, and my dad was playing. He was competing, and I had broken my leg, so I was in plaster, and I couldn't go in the swimming pool, so I was like always bored. And someone gave me like a little racket and a ball, and I just started hitting against the wall, and they were feeding, and I was hitting. And turned out I was pretty good for a 3-year-old. Like, I could actually hit the ball, and everyone was like amazed that I could do that in a chair. Literally the next day, I was like all over the news. The newspapers came, TV came. I got a trophy from the tournament, which is kind of, looking back, I was like, I don't really know why, but I mean, great. And then when I came home, my dad just started taking me to play tennis, and then it kind of evolved from there, really.
And it's interesting here you talk about the attention that it got even as a 3-year-old. How have you dealt with that attention as you've got older, but as you've got more successful? Because the amount of Grand Slams you've got is absolutely remarkable. You've got so many accolades. You're going to have so much more, I reckon, that if I spoke to you at Christmas, and hopefully a gold medal there. How do you deal with it from an energy point of view, an emotional point of view? Because I know you've spoken about anxiety as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, like I said, tennis is, or any sport at a higher level, is consuming. Like it takes over your life, because you have to commit 100% to it, and there's not much room for, you know, partying and drinking and social circles. Like I don't have a lot of friends now because I never made those connections when I was young. I dropped out of college 3 months into it to turn professional, because I'd literally just come back from Beijing. So I never went to college, never got A levels, never did uni, and that's where a lot of people make connections, right? I didn't have any of that, but I was just determined to do. I knew what I wanted out of life. Like I knew my potential. I believed in my potential, and it's something that I've always wanted. So it's been difficult because I've missed out on a lot, but if you don't sacrifice, it's kind of like that saying, isn't it? Like, if you want something you don't have, you have to do things that you've never done. So it's yeah, I just get on with it.
Do you feel like
very chilled?
Do you think that is what you have to do to achieve your level? You have to sacrifice certain things.
Yeah, you do. And obviously, as a kid or as a young teenager or a young girl, it's hard. It can be hard to deal with, especially if you're very successful quite young, because you are in the spotlight, and you do have to kind of watch what you do and watch what you say, and then you become a role model. And yeah, there was a time in my life where I really struggled with the pressure of tennis and the pressures that were put on me, probably mainly by myself, if I'm honest, because I am quite hard on myself because I have a high standards. But also, you know, your coaching team and your federation, there's a lot of pressures that go on you because they want you to do well, and they know that you can do well. And yeah, sometimes that can be quite difficult to deal with.
Is there anything you particularly do to deal with that you found over the years, especially as you've become a mom or you've gone through more competitions and learned about yourself?
Yeah, I think it wasn't until I had my son that I realized that there's more to life than sport. And it's a strange one, because I feel like for me, to get the best out of my sport, I had to take my focus away from sport. When I had my son and completely fell in love with him and was a mum and did normal things and became really happy, that's actually when I realized, okay, I'm only doing, at the time, I think I was only doing about 10 or 15 hours a week training, whereas my competitors were probably doing 20 to 30 hours. And yet I was beating them, and I was playing really well because I was happy. And it's not something that, you know, before I was like, okay, I'm not playing well, I'm going to do more hours. Because I did more hours, I was under more pressure, I was more tired. Actually, when I took that time away, and that's why I think this last year has actually been pretty good, kind of a blessing in disguise, because I've had all this time out. I've had time to reflect. I've had family time. I've been happy. I've been able to decorate my house, like simple things. And I've come back and I'm refreshed, and I feel good in myself, and I'm playing good tennis because of it.
I'm utterly convinced that this is the key. And you'd be surprised how many other people at the top of the game have said really similar to you. I suppose it's why I'm smiling listening to you. Do you think that shows how key psychological or the mind plays in things and in success?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the mind is the most powerful tool you have, and that can be negative or positive, because whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So you know, before I felt like all I was thinking was negative, like focusing on, I can't do that, or I didn't play good there, or I should have done that. Whereas now I'm just focusing on, okay, what can I do? So when I come up against an opponent, I'm not too worried about their ranking, how their forehand's going, or what they're going to do on the day, or what they might do on the day. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? How do I play? Because if I play my game, that's all that should matter. Like that's the most important thing, because if I play good and I feel good, probably going to win. If I'm concentrating on what they're doing all the time, it's all about controlling the controllables. So like, I'm trying to control the weather. Like, I can't control the weather. So if it rains all day and I get a 6-hour delay, it is what it is. Like, there's just no point in worrying about that. And that's all in the mind. That's how you respond to those things that happen to you.
For those that are listening, maybe that can relate to some of the things you're talking about and that have social anxiety, can you talk a little about, if you feel comfortable with it, about what that's like for you and what it feels like, and also whether the things you just mentioned there are what you use as a tool to cope with that too?
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult. Like, it's I think it's easy to listen to someone say control the controllables.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Things
So
like that,
actually
because
do it.
yeah, it's really difficult to do. And this, like, what you're hearing now from me is a process of years. I've worked really closely with a sports psychologist. I've been and had cognitive behavioural therapy to try and help with anxiety as well. So this is a years, like my whole life, basically. I've just been programmed, I guess, how I've been responding to things so negatively. Whereas now, when I had that time to work on myself, over the last probably 18 months now, like really seriously, it's taken 18 months to 2 years to get to this point now where I really can control the controllables. I can control what I do. I can control how I feel. And then I sort of leave the responsibility of other people's emotions and other people's feelings to them. Like, I need to focus on me. So, I mean, for me, the defining thing, 2 years ago was like, okay, I'm really struggling with anxiety, or I'm really struggling in social circles. I'm really struggling in my tennis. I need help. And it was the defining moment where I was like, okay, I need to make a change. And as soon as I committed to that, I just felt like everything got better.
Thanks so much for sharing that, because I love what you said about how it takes time. I've also worked as a clinical psychologist, and it takes time. It's not just like a click of the fingers or a simple answer. When you first started your therapy, was it hard almost to stick with? Sometimes did you feel like you just didn't want to go there because it can be quite hard?
Yeah, definitely. It's a commitment that you have to make, and you have to be really disciplined with yourself. There were times when I thought, this is pointless, it's never going to work. There were times when I didn't even want to go to sessions because I just couldn't be bothered, or I just didn't feel like it was working, or I wasn't being really truthful when I was talking. But I just had to keep reminding myself, like, what do I want? I want to achieve the best things in Tokyo. I want to be happy as a person, and I want to be myself, like be my true self. And to do that, I have to commit. And to make a change, I have to commit and do something different to what I'm doing. And I think it was just holding on to that that kind of got me through. And now I'm starting to see real positive changes. So now it's easy because I can really see the change and feel the change. So it's easy for me to just roll in with that.
Yeah, you smiled like massively when you said that as well. It was like, yes, now I can actually feel it. Yeah. What do you think is the most important thing that you've learned about yourself?
A lot.
Yeah, how long have we got? You have to go pick your son up, don't you? So maybe I'll shorten that question.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much I take on from other people. It's kind of a recent thing, actually, that I've realized how much of other people's emotions and baggage that I actually take as my personal emotional baggage. And I kind of always knew I did it, and that's why I always felt really heavy. But it wasn't until recently where I was like, wow, I really take on a lot that is not my responsibility. And that's been a big change point for me.
Yeah, because that must be really important when you're training or going to competition, because if you feel the load of everyone else's emotions on top of you, it must feel like an absolute weight.
It is massively, like like a weight's been lifted. And like I said before, like if I just focus on what I'm doing when I'm on the court, what am I doing? What am I trying to achieve? How do I do that? And it's just real bringing the focus point back to me every time.
What's it feel like in those moments when you first go on court?
Pretty nerve-wracking, to be honest. I think everyone gets nervous, like especially at the Grand Slams, no matter who the opponent is, just the event. And it's really difficult not to focus on the outcome, because I find it worse where if I get an opponent that I feel like I could beat, because then the anxiety levels are so high, because I'm already like, okay, I should beat this person, I can't lose to this person, and automatically you're like, no, like you just need to bring it back, focus on the process, and then the outcome will sort out itself. So I find that bit a lot more nerve-wracking than maybe actually playing the match.
Right, okay. We spoke to Dan Evans actually in our first season of this podcast, and he talked a lot about going on tour as well. And at the very beginning of chatting to you, I think I listed numerous competitions that you've got coming up, and they're all in different locations. He said that with the traveling and the hotel rooms, etc., that he can find it quite lonely at times. How do you manage that? Or do you feel the same or not?
Yeah, it definitely can be lonely. I think that my biggest challenge is that I just miss my son. Like, it's great to have a week away because I'm like, woohoo, I can sleep in past 7. But then after about a week, I'm like, God, I really, really miss him. Like, I really need to go home. So my impending 3 weeks away is going to be quite tough, I think. But yeah, it definitely can be lonely. But that's why I always kind of like to spend my competition time partly with my friend circle. Like, I have a really great group of friends on tour, which I love to see. And then then you have that time in your room where you can read a book, you can Netflix it, you can do basically whatever you want, because it's the only time, well, for someone like me who's so busy and also a mum, it's the only time I actually get to myself. So at the moment, I'm quite, that side of stuff, I'm actually quite looking forward to going away, because I get that time to myself. I can have a bath without like bath toys being stuck in my bag. So that's quite exciting.
It's really nice to hear you talk about being a mom, and you can tell how much it shaped you and how you approach your career. And I was actually looking about how old your son is, and also Serena's daughter, Olympia, as well. They're exactly the same age. Was there any inspiration or help, seeing Serena, obviously also on the tour, coming back from into competition and being a mom, because it was so publicized?
Yeah, I think because when she announced her pregnancy, I was still trying to get pregnant. So it was kind of like a reassurance. Because I think she announced it in like the January, and I found out I was pregnant in the May. So it was really reassuring to know that someone in sort of in my position is doing the exact same thing that I want to do. So yeah, it was definitely a nice thing to hear. And actually, in Wimbledon in 2019, Jackson and Olympia played together in the Wimbledon preschool, because they were in the, like, they have like a nursery.
Brilliant.
And they were playing really lovely together. So it was actually really cool how that worked out, with like, I was like, me and Serena were kind of pregnant at the same time, and then our children actually met. So it was kind of cool.
You can almost like, they can go and play together and go and play tennis together while you guys are on tour.
Yeah, and it was actually really great to see, because obviously I knew who Olympia was, and but for Jackson, he was just playing with this little girl who he just loved playing with. So it was actually really lovely to see the innocence from, they were just 2 kids playing with each other from totally different backgrounds, but it was so nice to see.
Yeah, I can imagine. And we've talked so much about so many different things, I think, but one of the things towards the end, normally I always ask people, is what advice they would give to anyone that's maybe struggling at the moment.
I would say that, well, there's a lot you can say, but I think it's about really looking about what you want. You really have to say, okay, no matter what the situation is, you kind of need to filter out what is the things that you can change? Because there's always going to be something you can change, and I see that a lot, especially, you know, people who have low income, for example, and they're stuck in a dead end job or whatever it is. And it's like, actually, can you change it? Can you do something to improve your situation? Because I think it goes back to that mindset, right? You have to have that mindset of, okay, I don't like where I am right now, but how do I change that? How do I be happy? How do I get more money? How do I find the love of my life? Whatever it is, it comes back to in here. And like, crappy things are always going to happen in life, always, like that's inevitable. It's actually about how you respond to those things.
And what about people that specifically have social anxiety? Is there anything that you can help in terms of advice?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been told, like, oh, you're so socially awkward, and being in a group of people, that made me really nervous. And I think it was a combination of, okay, is this really me? Like, how do I want to be? Like, why is this happening? And again, like I said, like, seeking the help if that's the route you want to go down. But also, I felt the more that I put myself in those situations where it feels uncomfortable, like I'm not in my comfort zone, the better I got. Because I feel like to grow, you have to go out of your comfort zone. If you sit in your comfort zone all the time, you're never going to come out of it, and you're never going to grow as a person. So it's hard, but little by little, like, come out of that comfort zone, whether it's, okay, I'm going to meet 2 people today, not 1, or I'm going to walk to the bus stop, you know, whatever that is for you, come out of the comfort zone.
Yeah, because our natural reaction is to just avoid it. I think it's a big
Absolutely.
human behavior, I think, that we do when things are uncomfortable.
It is, and I did it all the time. I was like, oh no, I'm not going to go to that networking event, I'm not going to go to that party, whatever. But I pushed myself there, and then I meet really great people and have like the best time. And then I've made like a friend for life because I've been to that event, or that event that you go to then leads on to, I don't know, a job opportunity, which then can improve something else. And you just don't know where those leads are going to come from. And I think the more you put yourself out there, the better you'll be equipped to deal with it.
So before I let you go, I've got one more question for you. Bear with me. So are you ready for it? If your life was a film, right, what can you describe to me what the opening scene would be? What does it look like? What does it feel like?
So you know that section in Frozen where Anna is in the bed and it's like her birthday, I think, and her hair's like everywhere and she's like dribbling and like she's trying to get up and her sister's waking her up. Probably something like that, because every morning I literally look like that. And then I realized, oh, I need to do something today, and then I'll like shut out of bed, and then like things are crazy. So probably something like that.
That's brilliant. That is not what I expected at all.
Oh, really? That's how I pretty much start every single day.
I love that. That's brilliant. I was like, Frozen, right? Okay, where are we going with this? I am actually going to throw one last question at you. So this year, you know, you've kind of mentioned your goals a little bit, but is there anything you specifically have as your focus that you want to achieve by the end of this year? And is that how you work out goals?
Yeah, I think maybe if you would have asked me this a year ago, I would have said I want to come away with at least 1 more Grand Slam singles title and at least 2 medals from the games. One of them has to be gold. And although I still want those things, I think if I can get to the end of the year and I can look myself in the mirror and say I have no regrets, then that's big success for me. Because no matter what happens in Tokyo or at Wimbledon or whatever, if I can say, look, I gave it everything, I don't regret anything, then what happened was meant to happen. I just don't want to focus on, if I get gold, does that define me and my worth? Because it doesn't. That's an object. So I think now it's more about having no regrets.
Yeah, I love how you've just put that. Thank you so much for joining us, Jordanne. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I'm now going to go and have a look at that scene in Frozen.
Yeah, you need to, because then you'll understand.
I think that's probably how I look like as well. Yeah, thank you, and good luck for this year as well.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you all for listening. There are loads more episodes to enjoy, including the likes of Dan Evans, Tom Bosworth, Ellie Simmons, and loads more. And remember to visit sportinglife.com ahead of the rest when it comes to unbiased opinion and sports analysis. And if you are really struggling, you can always reach out for help. It just takes one call. Charities such as Mind, the Samaritans, and Sport in Mind are there to help and do understand. You can also text SHOUT to 85258 if you don't want to talk on the phone as well. Take care. Thanks so much to Jordanne, and we'll speak again very soon.